Welcome back to the Sports Complex on a Wednesday afternoon. On the show today, Texas women's basketball takes on Oklahoma tonight in a matchup that could decide the regular season Big 12 winner. A big matchup for Texas women's basketball tonight against Oklahoma. We will get into Texas baseball getting a win over St. John's. Of course, we will talk about Texas basketball handling business in Lubbock and my man Brock Cunningham coming through to show Lubbock just how Texas feels about him in that game. We'll talk some other Big 12 action as well in basketball. Get to the big fat poll of the day. Get to some NFL talk as well. The Combine is rolling right along. And the NFL Players Association put out their yearly poll of how the teams are doing. We'll get into all of that. And, of course, some NBA talk as well. We didn't get into it yesterday. We'll get into some NBA talk as well. All three teams in Texas were in action last night. So we'll get into that. And, of course, your text, 512-447-3776, 512-447-3776. That is the text line number. You guys drive the show. I just try to keep it on the rails. That means whatever you guys want to talk about, we'll keep talking about it. Sometimes you get my blood pressure a little high. Sometimes the building gets a little hot. Cold front blew in this morning, so I think we'll be okay today. But I love talking to you guys on the text line. No matter what you say, I enjoy when you're part of the show here. 512-447-3776 is the text line number. I already see Chan says, see if the haters show up in the show. I think I think the haters will still be here. I think they'll still be here. I did want to ask if this has happened to anybody else. Does this happen to me today? And it was very frustrating. And I want to see if anybody else this has happened to. I was having a good day. Texas got the win last night. That made me pretty happy. So I was walking the dog this morning, and I got this started, I'll start off. I'll give you some preface on this. I wear contacts, so I had to go get another prescription. I don't have a regular eye doctor I go to. So I went to a place that was by where I live. I went in, and then they were like, okay, well, do you want all these, extra things? And I was like, no, I don't. I just need the prescription. That's all I need. I just need to get that done. So they sign this waiver. You're not going to do it. I did that. I go in. I get my eyes checked. I come back out, and then they're like, oh, well, we did them all anyway, so you owe us the money for those. They're not covered by your insurance, and you owe us several $100s that you weren't expecting. They also tried to upsell me some glasses that they were like, okay, we'll get these glasses. And basically, so I went in where my bill should have been like $100, and when they first tried to ring me up, it was $800. I was like, no, we're not doing that, guys. I did not plan on an extra $800 expense this month. So then we're like, cut the glasses, and we got it down. It was like $300 something bucks. So I was pretty upset because I don't like when people try to get over on me like that. And you said you didn't want to do this stuff, and they did it anyway. And they're like, well, too late now. So I was like, cool. Well, I'm just never going back to that place again. Screw them. I'm not going back. I got the email today and a text message that was like, hey, we just scheduled you for another appointment. We're just confirming. It's a courtesy. This is a courtesy email to let you know you've been scheduled again for another appointment, which I never scheduled. They're just like reminder for your appointment. And then they're like, if you want to reschedule, not if you want to cancel, if you want to reschedule. So I had to try and get out of that today. Is anybody else dealt with this now, where people are now just like, if you just say, well, I don't ever want to do business with you again, they're like, well, we scheduled you again. What are you going to do about it? We have your insurance information. So we're just going to try and screw you. Does this happen to anybody else? I'm curious about it. I'm curious if this is a thing now. I've heard one other person that I know something similar happened to, but it was very frustrating this morning to deal with somebody being like, where I was like, well, I'll just not deal with them again. That's fine. I'll move on in life. And they apparently were not ready to end the relationship. I don't want to give out their name, but I will say, please don't do that if you run a business. That is not cool. Very not cool. But let's get into it. Text line's open, 512-447-3776. I'll start off with Texas women's basketball. Before we get there, before we talk a little Texas men's basketball, let's talk a little Texas women's basketball because they do have a big game tonight coming up. Texas right now, number 3. They're going to take on number 20, Oklahoma. Oklahoma actually leading the Big 12 conference right now in the women's basketball. They have a game lead over Texas. Texas, with a win tonight, would tie with them. They'd be 1-1. Oklahoma beat Texas earlier this season. The story is that after they beat them, Vic Schaefer was not thrilled about it and had to practice the next morning at 5:15 in the morning was practice time for the women's basketball team, and that's when they started to help turn it around. If I read the tiebreakers right, that would mean they would go next is their record against the next best team, which would be Kansas State, and Texas 1-1 with them. Oklahoma's 0-1 against them. Only played them once this season because the new teams in the Big 12. Texas, both teams, everybody only has one more game left after this week's game. So once we get through this week, they play again on Saturday, which is that 10K for 10K. Remember that. If you want to go to the Moody Center on Saturday, tickets are the most expensive tickets you're going to buy are $15. And if they sell 10,000 tickets, get 10,000 people in there, Vic Schaefer is going to match a $10,000 donation. They'll get some other people to match that, raise a bunch of money for the Neighborhood Longhorns Foundation. But so if you want to go check out the senior nights, support this women's team who has really overperformed and done a great job this season, check out all the details on that 10K for 10K. But tonight in Oklahoma, playing a big game, try and win the Big 12 there, try and go on and win the tournament, go on and get a streak going, get you ready for the NCAA women's tournament would be great. Really, the guys you got to watch out for, the girls you got to watch out for for Oklahoma. Lexi Keys is their big three-point shooter. She's shooting about 37%. They are a pretty good scoring team at Oklahoma. They have a pretty good three-point percentage. Some of their guys can shoot the threes. And you want to watch out for that Madison Booker versus Skylar Vinga matchup. Those two are going to be going at it. The good news for Texas is Oklahoma doesn't have a ton of size, a ton of height. Texas is going to beat them in the height department, so hopefully you can get those rebounds where they've been rebounding people. They've been able to score points in the paint. You just want to make sure you don't have the turnovers that have gotten Texas in trouble before, where Vic Schaefer starts to get pretty upset. But you should be able to go inside against this team and hopefully get in there. Hopefully Madison Booker has another big game tonight for Texas women's basketball. That would be a lot of fun to see that. Get a big win. Anytime Texas can beat Oklahoma, it's a positive thing. So we're going to be rooting for that one. Let's talk. All right, let's get into it. We'll get into it now, and I'm sure we'll get into it in the 5 o'clock too. I'm sure we'll have some texters keep coming in, but let's talk about Texas versus Texas Tech at Lubbock. Texas last time traveling to Lubbock, and I imagine after last night, there will be no rush to schedule another non-conference game for Texas men's basketball in Lubbock. If there was any talks of it at all already, if there was any notion of it or inkling of it happening, those might have been thrown out last night. Because last night, Texas not only gets the win, we can go into a couple different things. We'll start off with the controversy, but the issue of in the second half, Texas is playing pretty well. Texas Tech is trying to make any sort of impact and run into the game and going for a rebound. The ball bobs out. Brock Cunningham is running over to the sideline. Darian Williams also coming over to the sideline. And Brock tries to make a basketball move where he's trying to cut off Darian Williams and let the ball go out of bounds because he feels it'll be a Texas ball if it goes out if the ball just goes out without being touched. He does that too aggressively. It was a flagrant foul. I wouldn't make it a flagrant 2. I get in today's game. I get at Lubbock that it's a flagrant 2. I would have said it was a flagrant 1. I think it's also one of those plays that we see now so often in so many sports where when you watch it in real time, it doesn't look terrible. Darian Williams really only bounces about 3 feet and then pops right back. He doesn't even go down, hits himself in the chairs, gets up, and he's fine. So it was aggressive, but I think real speed, it looked a lot not as bad at all, as opposed to when you slowed it down and you see Brock kind of bracing himself and you say, okay, you can't be doing that, especially not in heated moments when we're up. It was unfortunate that he went that, he braced for it. But yeah, to think that Brock Cunningham also has such good body control that at full speed can really go try and injure a player. He also didn't go high or low. He went body to body contact. So those are usually not going to be injuring plays or something like that where you're going to take somebody at their head or try and knock somebody out and injure them. It was a hard hit. I personally said it was a flagrant 1 when I saw it happen. But they go at it. Some of the Texas Tech players get flared up. The crowd starts freaking out because they had already thought that the fix was in. And still, I will never get this in sports, that fan bases that will say, any game we win, we have won. We won every game we won because we're fighting the hardest and we have the best players. Every game we lose, it is because it is set predetermined. The game is fixed. Somehow we're not a part of it. Somehow everyone else has fixed this. And the Big 12 wants Texas to be doing well and wants them in the tournament and wants them in the Big 12 tournament to be well. I don't get that. I think the commissioner's already made a point that he doesn't really care about Texas and Oklahoma, but you can believe whatever you want to believe. I think the game, they were just calling it tight because it was a rivalry game for Texas Tech, and it was a rivalry game, and it was going to be a heated game. They knew that. The refs just called it tighter. And Texas was able to get, the benefit of that. So that happens. Then the court, they start throwing water bottles and stuff on the court finally. And hats off to Texas Tech for finally getting out there and their coach being able to get out and get them to stop throwing and get the game back going on, because at a certain point, I thought there was a good chance that Rodney was going to pull the guys off of the court just to at least make a statement that this was not acceptable. Like the second or third thing that got thrown down, I thought they may go ahead. And when they had to drag the guy out, I thought maybe he'd pull his team, but he didn't, which is good. They were able to stay out there. It did give Texas Tech a little bit of momentum right there to go fight for it. Texas did a good job weathering that storm, let the crowd tire themselves back out, hit some big shots, and get back into it and win the game, get a good win, 81-69. It wasn't really that close either. We can say it wasn't that close because Texas Tech hit a meaningless three at the end of the game. It wasn't that close because it was Texas really slowing down at the end of the game and just trying to run the clock out, with Texas Tech really going for it. But a couple of things to note. One, we saw Dillon Mitchell did not have a great game, only plays 21 minutes. It was a matchup we kind of thought was going to be a bigger deal in this game. He goes 0 for 2. He ends up with only 2 points in the game. Just wasn't able to contribute offensively the way we had hoped, attacking the paint. Does get a few rebounds, gets 8 rebounds. He does help out in some other ways, had some big rebounds at the end of the game and had some energy, but wasn't necessarily offensively the player you would have hoped he could have been in this game. But that all comes down to two, the entire game plan and everything for Texas, which I'm big on RT winning this. I'm big on Texas winning this. I'm big on, getting a big win on the road. I said yesterday it was 50-50 is where I was at ranking. If you would have told me that Warren Washington was not going to play in this game, I would have said it would have been up to 65-70% and pretty much a must-win for Texas. Because when you take Warren Washington out of this game, Texas Tech has not been the same team without Warren Washington, the big 7-footer in the paint. Dylan Disu now becomes a matchup threat as opposed to offensively somebody that has struggled against guys that are 7 foot and a little bit taller than him. He's struggled more against those types of players this season. You take that equation out, he's going to be a lot better player. You take away the depth in the front court for Texas Tech, and now those matchups are a lot better. So I think it changed some things, the spacing of the court, the two-man game with him and Disu where Dillon Mitchell could drive and get those assists. That kind of all out the window when Warren Washington is out of the game. But this was when Warren Washington did not play. He was a game-time decision. He's been injured a lot this season. I think Texas Tech is doing the same thing Kansas is, where they're trying to get their guys healthy for the postseason run. So they're going to sit them a little bit now here at the end, like McCullers in Kansas and Warren Washington and Texas Tech. They know they need those guys to compete at a high level. So those guys did not play. Texas has to win when that doesn't, and they do. They get the job done. That's the important part. You're on the road. Anything can happen. You get the job done when you get there. IT Horton actually gets a starting call for Texas in this game instead of Kendall Weaver. Interesting decision. I think I get why he did it. He's trying to add more scoring, more spreading the court to get Dylan Disu some more space, to get Max Abmas a little bit more open. I think putting another shooter, even though he hasn't been hitting his shots either, he is a better shooter than Kendall Weaver is. Guys understand you can't leave him open because if he gets hot, you're screwed. So he wasn't necessarily a huge impact offensively in this game. However, he was somebody that does get the starting job, only plays 20 minutes. Kendall Weaver actually ends up playing 30. But the other factor of putting IT Horton in is instead of Kendall Weaver in the starting lineup is when Kendall Weaver comes in with all that energy, he brings you that second spark that when Texas has started to struggle a little bit, 8 minutes, 12 minutes into the game, now you have Kendall Weaver who's really picking up a second wind with 8 minutes, and now you get that second run, that second jump up, and Kendall Weaver has himself a game on the bench, 15 points, and most notably, what do I keep saying? Shoot some free throws. Kendall Weaver goes 9 of 11 from the free throw line, keeps attacking the paint. Texas shoots 24 of 30. They get to the free throw line in the game. They get to the free throw line. They go, and when the game starts to slow down in the second half, they attacked the paint. And they realize, yeah, it's not great that you're stopping the clock and scoring, but instead of taking bad threes, drive the paint, create contact. The refs were calling it in the second half, especially after the Brock Cunningham ejection. They start calling everything. You see Pop Isaacs start going to it. He understands what's happening, so you had to go the other way. Kendall Weaver understood that. I.T. Horton went in there and did it a little bit. Max A. Smith shoots the 2 free throws. He gets in there and gets a foul. Dylan DeSue gets in there. Everyone has a little bit of that getting into the paint, getting fouled move that you had to do in the second half. The refs are calling it tighter. Sometimes you don't get those. You still have to go in there and try and get it done. So it was good to see those types of things happen in this game. They also did pretty well blocking shots. They blocked 6 shots against Texas Tech. They prepared. Kendall Weaver had a great block in the second half when in a breakaway on a fast break where it could have really changed momentum again. Kendall Weaver did something that I thought was really high basketball IQ for a sophomore, where Pop Isaacs coming down, Kendall Weaver's running step for step with him, sees Pop Isaacs start to cut in to try and create contact where he doesn't care about getting the shot in. He's going to go get those 2 free throws and then maybe be able to force a shot in. But he wants to get the foul on Kendall Weaver. Kendall Weaver sees this, takes steps away from the basket where he's getting himself in worse position technically, but now Pop Isaacs cannot get the foul because he's going to put himself underneath the basket, makes it a harder shot for Pop Isaacs. Kendall Weaver elevates above him, still is able to get his hand out and get a piece of the ball, but just a really, really high IQ play by Kendall Weaver to see Pop Isaacs trying to get a foul there and Kendall Weaver realizing he can't pick up that silly foul. He wants to contest, but takes those steps away. And if you watch that replay, you see Pop Isaacs take a step in, and as soon as he does, Kendall takes 2 away and is still able to get a block. That right there was one of the most impressive plays to see from a younger guy that hasn't had a lot of playing time early in the season, to understand the situation, understand that you don't want to give them 3-point plays, understand you don't want to give them momentum, and ended up still being able to get the block and take away momentum from this team. Just a huge play when you talk about all the things at the end of this game where this Texas Tech team is really good in the last 8 minutes, and they were able to slow that down. And all those pieces coming together for Texas to be able to hold on. The numbers didn't look great. The numbers didn't in the second half. They were outscored 46-34. If you look at their shooting numbers, it was not great for them in the second half. But they did get to the free throw line. They were able to control the clock and play some defense as well. There was some, the last 3 minutes probably of the game, they were trying just not to get a lot of fouls and trying to step away because they knew the refs were calling everything. So they let some things that probably should have had a bit of a more contest in there. There's still plenty to look at on game film, but a good overall game and game plan from Texas coming into this one. Again, I'll give Texas Tech. Warren Washington was out. That was a must-win for Texas. When you take out a big 7-footer, that's one of the better players for Texas Tech, especially defensively. And, you're going in there and you're already a pretty evenly matched team. As far as, where now you're putting it, where Texas is the faster, stronger, bigger team, you have to win those games. You just have to. Now, when they played Houston, they weren't the stronger team. They weren't the faster team, and they weren't as disciplined. When they played Kansas, they weren't as tall. They weren't as fast. They weren't as talented. But you go into Texas Tech, and that's a team that will fight for everything, but they don't have the recruits. And they don't have those players that are just physically super talented and super big. You have to be able to win those games. They do. That's a big win for Texas. They've shown this season they can win the games that they need to. Early on, we know they had some losses that you love to get back, they didn't show up. Didn't have their lineup figured out, when they were still trying to play 3 bigs, that lineup just didn't work early in the season. When they were trying to work Dylan DeSue back into the starting lineup, they were trying to figure out what was happening there, and then Caden Shedrick started to have those injuries and the back spasms. That part of the season, there was a lot going on where they lost some games that they would love to have back to be 2 or 3 games above 500. That didn't happen. However, get the big win now. We said they need to win one of these road games. They needed to win one to try and finish 500. They got 3 games left. You need to win both home games, And if you beat Baylor, you're great. But you need to win both your home games against Oklahoma State and Oklahoma. We'll get more into that as we go along. Also happened last night. We did see Cincinnati put up a fight against Houston, 67-59. Houston gets the win there. Victor Locken actually gets back in the lineup, has a pretty good game, 11 points, 9 rebounds. They out-rebound Houston 42-30. LJ Cryer's a decent game, but in reality, Cincinnati just doesn't hit enough three-pointers, and Houston doesn't shoot threes a lot that well either. They get an 8-point win. Houston gets a win. They need to walk away from that. Didn't look like they were up for it. Not Houston's best effort, but they get the win there. And the huge upset, BYU goes into Kansas and knocks off a very, very long home winning streak for Kansas. I believe they were kind of looking past BYU, how Texas did when they went there. BYU upsets Kansas 76-68 in Kansas. Dallin Hall, 18 points, goes 3 of 6 from 3. Jackson Robinson, 18 points, 4 of 9 from 3. The three-point shooting for BYU takes it out. Kansas without McCullers in this game. Timberlake comes into the game. Nicholas Timberlake comes in. He did pretty well against Texas, does not do well against BYU. 1 of 9 shooting, can't get it going. They only shoot 3 of 15 from 3, are not able to get the ball going in this game, and then Kansas gets a big loss at home. But that is the wake-up loss. That's the loss for Kansas, where they have to realize they got to stick it up. They got to stay playing better, stick up for themselves a little bit better, because they have a big loss there. In action tonight, Oklahoma is taking on number 8 Iowa State. This is going to be a game where both teams are going to rely on defense in this game. It feels like Iowa State should be able to handle business. Oklahoma will stay with them. It shouldn't be a blowout, but Iowa State just a little better at defense, and they're being a little bit more consistent offensively, especially at home versus Oklahoma on the road. Iowa State's averaging 10 steals per game right now. That is a big number. Oklahoma, if they don't turn the ball over, has a shot, but Oklahoma has not been playing as well down the stretch. Iowa State keeping it going. You also see UCF at Oklahoma State tonight. Something to watch if you're getting ready for Oklahoma State, Texas on Saturday. You want to scout them a little bit. You can watch UCF at Oklahoma State tonight. Oklahoma State's been scoring pretty well at the end of the season. Last 3 games, they've had over 80 points a game. They're playing a lot better early in the season. They played a lot of their older guys, started off really, really bad playing their older guys. They've started to go a little bit younger in that lineup, and it's been working out. UCF has had too many turnovers as of late. They've struggled on the road. Oklahoma State could get another confidence-inspiring win before they come to Texas. Something you should check out tonight if you want to kind of check out what Texas competition is going to be when Oklahoma State comes to town on Saturday. We should also mention before we go to break, Texas baseball. Texas gets the win 15-4 over St. John's. There was points in the game where it looked like St. John's might try and make a run at it. Texas is able to keep the points coming on. Max Grubbs goes 2 1/3 before starting to get in a little bit of trouble. He ends up giving 3 hits and 3 runs. Luke Harrison comes in, gets the win in a inning and a 2/3. Only allows 1 hit and 2 Ks. And Tanner Witt does come in, finishes the game out. I can't say the closer. He pitches the last inning of the game. Does come in, no hits, no walks, and a strikeout in that. So didn't allow anything. Did well in relief. We'll see if they're going to try and use him in relief or if this was just something to get him back out on the field. But Tanner Witt does get a little bit of action last night against St. John's. Also, Jalen Flores, a sophomore shortstop, gets another grand slam, 6 RBI game for him. The freshman Will Gasparino has a good game, 3 hits in that game, 4 RBIs. Good to see the freshman getting off on it. It was definitely a good game for Texas to see some guys that you wanted to see, some of the younger guys hit the ball pretty well in that game. The pitching looked well. Good to see Tanner Witt come in and have a good outing in the 9th inning. So a lot of good coming out of that Texas-St. John's game. You would have liked Max Grubbs to do a little bit better, but he's not one of your regular starters, so it's not going to be the biggest issue in the world. You'd hope that Tanner Witt, though, that news or that showing that he had, it's late, and I get it, and maybe the team, St. John's, had kind of given up already, but I'm not going to take anything away from a guy who's fought back from what he's fought back for and, didn't have his best first start the other day, but good inning there to get some work in and not walk anybody is kind of the bigger one you want to look at right there, that he was able to locate the ball where he wanted to put it. All right, let's get to Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the day, and then we can start getting to the text. I see some are already coming in. I know you guys are going to want to talk about some stuff, so we'll get into that. But why don't we get to the big fat poll of the day?
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the Day on the Horn.
Big fat poll of the day today. You know, I get that there's going to be some people that think that Brock Cunningham was acting out and that he's too violent on the court and everything else. I know there's some people who probably thought that was a much more vicious play than it was. As someone who played basketball for a long time, I've been on either side of those plays plenty of times. They're annoying. In the moment, it feels like someone's taking a cheap shot. They're usually not. It's just two guys running for something, and if you've been hit enough in your life and got into those collisions, that, it hurts a lot less if you're the one hitting. So he went and did it. Hey, and hats off to Williams for not flopping like Steve Nash and breaking his nose to try and get a call and then costing himself in the playoffs. Just taking cheap shots at Steve Nash. But he came back and, they end up separating and get through it. But it does put, when Brock Cunningham's being escorted out, he's throwing up the hook 'em up. He's throwing the hook 'em to everybody. When he got to Lubbock last year or the year before and came out with the hook 'em and was flashing it when the bus pulls in and all the guys are yelling at them, and all the Texas Tech Red Raiders are yelling at Brock Cunningham for what he's meant to this team. And I know he's not having his best season. He was having one of his better games. Ironically, before he gets tossed out of the game, one of his best games of the season so far for Brock Cunningham. But in honor of Brock Cunningham and him showing Texas Tech a very nice way that Texas does not want to continue the rivalry. Who is your favorite glue guy? Who's your favorite culture guy? Who's your favorite team guy? And it could be any sport. It could be Texas, but it's all time. Who's your guy that you go, that guy bleeds it? He bleeds the team. He is for us there. He's the guy, and he's the guy that, when he's out there, this team is just better. When he's a part of this culture and part of this team, the team is better. That's the poll of the day in honor of Brock Cunningham. Who's your favorite glue guy, your culture guy, whatever you want to call it? Who's that for you all time? It could be a Longhorn. It could be pro sports. It could be any sport in Longhorns too. Whatever you want to say, who's your guy that you think, man, that guy. If when you put that guy in the locker room, things are just better. Let me know what you think on the text line, 512-447-3776. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we will get to the text line. We'll start answering those and go a little bit behind the burnt orange curtain. We come back here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn. Text lines open 512-447-3776. If you guys want to talk some Texas basketball, some Texas women's basketball, some Texas baseball, already talked all that. We'll get into some NFL, a little combine, the NFL Players Association poll. They've done it for this is the second year they've done it. We'll get into that a little bit in the 5 o'clock and some NBA talk as well. In the 5 o'clock hour. If you want to talk any of that, we can hit us up there too. And a big fat poll of the day today. Who is your favorite glue guy, culture guy, whatever you want to call it? But Brock Cunningham, that is your basis. But I've already seen some good answers. We'll get to those in just a minute when we start to get to that. The text line's open. We're going to get to those in just a minute, but I want to allow a little bit more time for that. So why don't we hit the Behind the Burnt Orange Curtain replay real quick. Go Behind the Burnt Orange Curtain with Rob Babers. A little hook 'em up replay here on the Sports Complex. We'll come back. We'll answer some questions on the text line and get rolling on a Wednesday. It's a little hook 'em up replay here on the Sports Complex.
All right, we got a couple of stories I want to hit here in Behind the Burnt Orange Curtain, Texas football related. First, the college football odds for the SEC championship and for the national championship for the college football playoff have been released. The SEC championship odds per Bet Online is Georgia at 2-1, and then Texas at 2.5-1. Odds to win the SEC title. Ole Miss is 6.5-1, so they're the third best odds. And Alabama with the fourth best odds, tied with Tennessee. So Tennessee and Alabama at 9-1. Then they got LSU at 10-1 odds to win the conference. So that's your top 6. I guess you would say 5 because there's a title. So that's your top 5 best odds to win the SEC title. Georgia, then Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee, LSU. Man, Texas 2.5-1. I would say right now in terms of returning starting quarterbacks, which Georgia has their returning starting quarterback too. You return all your coordinators and play callers. Also, I think Georgia returns all their coordinators and play callers. Texas returns 4 of the 5 starters on the offensive line. And Georgia's pretty stacked. I mean, Georgia's been stacking classes for, that's probably the most talented roster in all of college football. Them, Michigan, hell, Alabama was in that discussion before Nick Saban retired. That's to me for Texas right now to be in that discussion already to potentially win the SEC in their first year in the SEC. Man, that's a hell of a leap. That is an exponential leap in expectation and projections for Texas. But I will say, they built it the right way. Texas right now, their lines of scrimmage, which you got to make sure you're buttoned up on the lines of scrimmage going into the SEC. Texas is strong on their lines of scrimmage. Still some questions about the interior D-line. That's going to be, I think, one of the biggest issues to figure out. But the O-line, you're stacked. Your edges, you brought in a lot of good edge players. Everybody's expecting Ethan Burke and Barron Sorrell to take a leap, but you got Trey Moore coming in. You got a Colin Simmons. You got a young Anthony Hill. So right now, Texas seen as one of the potential SEC contenders, or at least behind Georgia, the second best odds to win the SEC.
Well, it's interesting. Who would have thought just a couple of years ago that we had the debate last night on the On Texas Football Tuesday night live stream, Rod, you and I, and CJ Vogel, which sport for Texas is most ready to compete and win a SEC championship when they get there. No one would have said football 2 years ago.
No.
Now it might be football. Now volleyball is going to trump all because volleyball is the national champion, so they're ready to win any conference.
Yep.
With Jared Elliott, but football might be 1A as far as the closest on-field, on-court to winning an SEC championship when they get there in 2024, and that's credit to Sark, this staff, and what they've built
I don't
pretty quickly.
I don't disagree with that. It's mind-blowing, but I don't disagree with that at all. I think they're set up really well with the changing landscape of the SEC. It helps that Nick Saban retired.
Sure.
Right, that helps a lot. And it helps that LSU lost like their Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and 2 first-round wide receivers. That helps too, because they could return probably the best O-line potentially in the SEC. And if they return the quarterback and those 2 receivers, that would be, to me, they would be a big threat. They're not. So I think it was like a perfect year of turnover for Texas to come into the SEC and potentially win it. All right, BetOnline also has their odds for the college football playoff, the new 12-team format. Ohio State with the best odds to make the college football playoff at minus 1,000. Then Georgia at minus 900, and then you have Oregon at minus 500, and then there's Texas. So Texas tied with Oregon, third best odds overall to make the 12-team playoff. And after that is Clemson and FSU at minus 250, K-State at minus 200, and Michigan, along with Utah at minus 110. So there you go. You got those are the best odds overall to make the college football playoff. So Texas with the fourth best odds overall behind Ohio State, Georgia, and Oregon. So essentially, I believe the odds are just saying Georgia. They believe Georgia's going to win the SEC, and Texas could face Georgia
twice, three times.
Three times. They can face them 3 times if everything goes right. They'll face them in the regular season. They're here implying they're going to end up facing them in the SEC title game, and if they both get to the college football playoff, which they will. There's a chance they could face each other in there too.
Yeah, it could be.
That'd be wild.
And yeah, we'll see. Both return quarterbacks, as you said, in Beck and Quinn, and then a lot of continuity in both of those places, Georgia and Texas, and not a lot of continuity in a lot of the other places around the SEC. Even LSU with a Heisman Trophy winner, Brian Kelly, but they've replaced coordinators on both sides.
Yep, you're right.
Jaden Daniels is moving on.
Two first-round wide receivers. Two guys going to be drafted first round. That's a lot to lose.
People are going watching the film now saying, man, this Malik Neighbors guy might be better than Marvin Harrison, or at least on par.
Oh, yeah.
That's how good he is. And no one's knocking Marvin Harrison Jr., but it's like, dang, this dude's got some company.
Yeah.
I've seen now several mock drafts, Rod, that suggest that those are the 2 best players in the draft, period. Like 1 and 1A, and then we can go to the quarterbacks. But as far as the 2 most the most talented, highest graded players in the draft, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors at the top of the draft. Speaking of draft, the combine does really get cranking up today. I'm pretty sure today would be the day that Tavondre Sweat will step on the scale.
That's important. It's a big day for him.
Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, Jalen Ford. So linebackers, defensive line going first. They'll be on the field tomorrow, but today's the day they do their weigh-ins and measurements and arm length and all that kind of stuff, and then they hit the field to do drills tomorrow on day 4 of being there. So defensive linemen, linebackers tomorrow. Defensive backs and tight ends on Friday on field on NFL Network, Rod. So that'll be J.T. Sanders, Ryan Watts. And then they go into the weekend with the quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs on Saturday. And then, of course, the offensive linemen. We'll wrap it up with the big dudes on Sunday.
Man, we were just talking about that LSU offense, which I don't know how. Man, that defense must have been really bad for LSU. It must have been putrid. That's why he fired everybody. Listen to these stats real quick. In the 2023 regular season against Power 5 teams, when LSU targeted Neighbors or Thomas, their 2 first-round wide receivers that are going to be taken, LSU had an explosive play rate, meaning a play of 15 yards or more 28% of the time. They had an explosive play, 15-plus yard play, anytime they targeted Neighbors or Thomas. That is freaky. That's crazy. That is why. Hell, Jaden Daniels on scrambles alone against Power 5 teams, he had an explosive play 27% of the time he scrambled. So you got explosive play 28% of the time you target your 2 receivers, and 27% of the time when your quarterback decides to just take off. Man, that defense must have been really bad because that offense was almost unstoppable.
It was. Well, they one of their 3 losses, LSU, they scored 49 and lost to Ole Miss 55-49. I mean, they put up huge numbers, and the defense was just terrible. And that was maddening for LSU fans. Like, wait a second. We're used to having great defense and no offense. What are we doing here?
We don't like this bizarro world that we're living in right now.
Yeah, now we're unstoppable. Yeah, but I mean, Jaden Daniels won the Heisman, put up almost 5,000 total yards, on the ground and through the air. They were dynamic.
All right, so real quick, Bucky Brooks put out his latest mock draft over at NFL.com. He's only a first-round mock draft. He's only got 1 Longhorn taken in the first round, and that Longhorn is Byron Murphy, but he's got Byron Murphy going to the Texans.
Hey.
23rd pick overall. Says DeMeco Ryans wants to invest in the trenches to help the defense take the next step. Murphy gives the Texans a rugged interior defender to build around. Remember, the Texans like taking Texas players. That's something Nick Caserio has admitted openly. Like, no, I like taking guys from the state. I want them to have pride in the teams in their state. And he believes like it helps in terms of the evaluation. Those guys getting more comfortable, adapting and acclimating to, the new team if they're in the state. He thinks it helps. The Cowboys, by the way, he's got the Cowboys taking Tyler Guyton. The offensive tackle from Oklahoma, with the 24th pick, in case Cowboys want to know what Bucky Brooks thinks you guys are going to do in the draft. Also, we didn't talk about this, but Ian Rappaport did report earlier this week that Jonathan Brooks is healing well and expected after his surgery. He's expected to be cleared by training camp. Won't do any drills, of course, for the combine, but they're saying right now he's expected to be cleared for on-field activity by training camp. That also is big news in case a team wants to invest in him. Looks like he could be ahead of schedule. Maybe they'll probably increase his draft stock even more because he's already a top running back on everybody's board that I've looked at.
And we mentioned the Cowboys team surgeon did that surgery, so the Cowboys know what's
Dan
going
Cooper.
on. Dan Cooper.
Dan Cooper, I believe is his name.
So Cowboys could be linking. Speaking of the Cowboys, Tyler Guyton, I wouldn't hate that pick at all. I think he's a real good lineman. Remember, Oklahoma's not going to have any returning offensive linemen this year going into the SEC because Tyler Guyton's one of the guys going to the NFL. Stephen Jones was asked yesterday about their number one overall pick a couple years ago, Tyler Smith, and would they move him out to left tackle if they lose Tyron Smith? And he said not likely. He said it feels like Larry Allen. That's how he referred to Tyler Smith.
He is good.
Feels like Larry Allen.
Larry Allen. I don't know.
Oh my gosh,
that's a hell of a
the
leap.
Hall of Fame.
That's a hell of a leap. But
he feels like it's trending to be Larry Allen.
He's a good player, though, man. He's a really good player.
He's physical and he's athletic.
Yeah, and he's versatile.
Yeah.
You can move out to tackle, put him at guard.
So it sounds like their plan is to keep him at guard because he's just so damn good, in the pulling game and getting down the edges when they need him to.
Which means they need to re-sign Tyron Smith.
That's probably true. Need to re-sign Tyron.
That's the case. And you need to draft, just like here, probably draft another lineman. It ain't sexy, but it's necessary.
Good stuff there. Hook him up with Ian Rob B. We're going to take a break here in a minute, but I do want to get the text line fired up, 512-447-3776. I see all you guys going in there. By the way, I do have some sound. We'll play in the 5 o'clock. Tavondre Sweat, a little bit of sound of him talking to the media at the Combine. Byron Murphy talking. We'll play both of that. I have another sound. Maybe I'll play in the next segment. Maybe we'll see if we'll play that. It's something that was it surprised me that was a thing. We may play that in the next segment. I want to play for you guys. But I want to get to the text line too. 512-447-3776 is the text line number. If you want to talk Texas basketball, Texas win over Texas Tech last night. The win for St. John's for Texas in baseball. The Texas women's team taking on Oklahoma in a big matchup tonight. Any of that? We'll get into NFL and some NBA in the 5 o'clock. You want to talk about those? A big buzzer beater. Get the Mavs get a devastating loss after a buzzer beater. Any of that. We can talk any of that on the text line. And the poll of the day, who is your glue guy, your culture guy, in honor of Brock Cunningham sending a message to Lubbock, maybe sending somebody to jail due to anger issues? Get to that. Keep sending those texts in. We will get to those when we come back here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back in the Sports Complex here on the Horn. Rolling right along on a Wednesday afternoon. Text line's open. You want to talk some Texas basketball, you want to talk some Texas women's basketball, some Texas baseball, some NFL, some NBA, any of that. Big fat poll of the day. Who is your favorite glue guy, your culture guy, in honor of Brock Cunningham? All of that. You can send it in on the text line 512-447-3776. Let's start hitting up that text line. All right, we'll go with Dave Ram. We'll start off with you, Dave. Says, now this is the type of defense that can travel anywhere. I haven't seen that kind of effort on defensive side of the court most of the season. Great D leads to confident offense. We were on offensively, and I don't expect that every game, but with defense like that, when we're struggling to shoot, we should still be in games and even win some of those. I just want to see effort night in and night out, and haven't seen that all season. I blame coaching for that. I want to be proved wrong, and will happily admit it that if RT can get that effort out of these guys from here on out. I like that. I like that you're happy and you're willing to go with it. I will say partially of the effort was because this was a matchup where they were the bigger, stronger, faster team. It is a lot easier to bring that effort and play it when you're playing against a team where you can stay in front of them a little bit better than you're taller than them. All of those things that they really help you put the effort. They did put it out there. And I think they've tried to put it out in other games and failed miserably. I think they've put out in other games and not failed and just haven't been able to do enough because they're outmatched. But they did really well in that first matchup. I mean, if you look at the numbers for Texas Tech in that first, and part of it is that they were, that they weren't playing well, but 8 for 33 from the field, 1 of 10 from the 3-point line for Texas Tech. That's solid defense. And the bigger deal is they were rebounding the ball really well as well for Texas. That's another thing you wanted to see in that first half was good rebounding, continuing to fight for every play, fight for loose balls. They didn't get the steals you would like to see. They got more blocks than they've been getting, protected the paint a little bit better. I think the reality of the situation was they had a matchup where they matched up really well with that Texas Tech team, especially without Warren Washington. And when they match up great, it becomes a lot easier to go out and do those things. And when things are going right, they can compound it. The big issue that Texas had is the players, when things go wrong, being able to change that. And that's part coaching, and that's part on the players. And as much as I'll say I give credit to where credit's due on the players played well last night, they went out and they had to bring the effort. You love to see that on the road as well. When you're in a hostile place, you love to see a team go and do that. But I'm happy, Dave, that you were happy with the effort last night and that we can be friends today. We can be friends today. Also on the text line, we saw who do you think is going to sign MVS because he got cut today? I'm not sure. That's not, I think he's going to be a free agent for a little bit. Martez Valdez-Scantling was cut from the Chiefs today. And then I think that there's teams that'll be interested, but you're going to go through the draft first. You're going to go through other free agent wide receivers. He's not a number 1. He's maybe a number 2, but probably more a number 3 at this point in his career. So I think that there'll be offers for him, but it's going to take a while. Saquon Barkley, if he doesn't stay with the Giants, which they're saying they want him to stay with the Giants, they really want him to be a guy there that, they're threatening the franchise tag again to try and get him to take a deal that's probably not in his best interest. I think the Texans are the front runner because we know that he wants to go there. We know that he feels he can go create some really special stuff there. And I think the Texans have the money to get it done. And if you want to look at somebody who could really be a real change back for them, that they, think has the right work ethic, right everything about him. The injuries are the concern, but that's a concern for a lot of running backs. But every other box he checks off, I think the Texans would be the front of that list. But the question is, do the Giants even let him go? Do they franchise tag him again? Do they throw caution to the wind at this point and say, screw it, we don't care. We just, he's our meal ticket. He's on all our posters because we can't put Daniel Jones out there. We don't have a wide receiver we can put out there. We don't have anybody on our marketing stuff other than Saquon Barkley, so we're going to keep him just for that. We don't care about winning right now, which would suck for him, but that's a possibility. It's a possibility. And you also say, Yuli Gurriel. I liked Yuli. Yuli was a good guy to have there on the Astros. I like that. Our text says, Bill Bates. Going old school Cowboys there. Bill Bates was one of those guys. Was a culture guy, glue guy. Definitely nailed that one. Nailed that one on the question. Rojo and Jay-Witt. I agree with that. Both recent glue guys for the Horns. Very good. That's a good poll on that one as well. Average Joe says Brock Cunningham kind of won that game last night. His play in the first half was huge. So I'll say in that stuff that the push on there didn't necessarily help Texas. They were able to weather that storm. I think Texas Tech came out of that faring a little bit better. They also started calling everything, and Texas Tech just started taking it right at Texas. So they had to kind of back out of playing tighter defense in the post and under the basket. So it didn't. I don't know if it helped him a ton in the long run of that one. But his play in the first half and his energy is a definite part of why they were playing so well in the first half. And Average also says Royale Ivy slapping the floor on defense. Yes, Royale Ivy is that guy. He's one of those guys that, I think he needs a head coaching job, so I wouldn't say to come to Austin and be a assistant coach with RT, but he's definitely somebody that I would love to see get a head coaching opportunity somewhere in the NBA or in college to get an opportunity because he's just a guy, huge basketball IQ. He's spoken very highly of everybody who's played under him as a coach. Would love to see him get that opportunity. Hoping for that. Jimmy the Gringo says, happy hump day, Patrick. Whoop, whoop. I love Brock Cunningham even more after last night. He showed he wasn't going to back down without a fight. Total basketball move. I would have made the same move, but I also like what he said to his team before he left the court. He said, I might be out, but don't let them come back. I believe that's what I got from reading his lips without the expletives. Threw the horns up in the locker room. Couldn't ask for more. The rest of the team played pretty well. I would have liked the lead to stay in the 15 to 20 range. But like you said, Texas Tech doesn't go away. They don't. And there was there was a few calls and a few plays that, Texas, if Texas went out and was trying to really score, I think they could have. But you were risking a team that could come back on you. If you miss a couple easy shots, you miss a couple easy dunks, you allow it too much room for Texas Tech to come back in too much time. So they were really trying to milk the clock. There were some jump shots I didn't like at that. I would have preferred that all of those, they basically drove the paint at the end and you try and make it a scrum and you play 50-50 balls. You try and get the ball out. Also, it's a lot easier to make a fast break off a missed three than it is a missed layup because everyone's going to be underneath the basket. So I would have liked them seem to attack the basket a little bit more some of those times. But other than that, I think the game plan was the correct game plan. All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get to keep going to the text line, 512-447-3776. We'll get into some NFL talk. I got some sound from the Combine, and I got some weird sound, too. I'll play for you. All that stuff coming up in the 5 o'clock. Also, some NBA talk. We'll keep it rolling here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, hornfm.com. Hour 2 here on the Sports Complex. Already talked some Texas basketball, Texas women's basketball, Texas baseball. We got the big fat poll of the day going. All of that you can still talk about on the text line 512-447-3776. Big fat poll of the day. Who is your favorite glue guy, culture guy? Your guy that is the team guy. It can be any sport, any level. You can go Longhorns, any sport. You can go to pro sports. Who is your guy? Had some good answers already. Keep sending those in on the text line. We're going to get some NFL talk, some combine news happening. I got some audio from the combine as well. I want to get to a little NBA talk as well today. We didn't get to it yesterday, but some big games. All Texas teams were in action last night. All three lost too, so not a great night for the teams, but some interesting stuff going on in the NBA. We'll try and get to that as well here in the 5 o'clock, but we want to keep getting to your text. You know, you guys drive the show. I just try to keep it on the rails. It doesn't always stay on the rails. I try, though. So if you guys want to keep the text line rolling, I'll keep trying to get to everyone I can get on here. Texter says, Patrick, not super proud of this, but Brock is my hero for today. He deserved the tee, but was just retaliating for what number 5 did to A-Smith earlier in the game. Super baller move with the hook 'em horns on the way out through the tunnel. I will say, too, I don't think it was retaliation. I don't think what Williams did to Max A-Smith was intentional at all. When I watched that one, it just seemed like a guy who was a little out of control, and his elbow caught Max A-Smith, who was coming in. I don't think it was intentional. Let's put it that way. I don't think Brock's was intentional to hurt him or anything else. I think he was trying to push him away from the sideline, and he knew that if he's going for that same run when he's going at it, and if Williams decides he wants to push Brock Cunningham into the ball so that it's Texas Tech ball, that he's going to shield himself and push back. It's a basketball play where he's looking at it. Now, does it look really, really bad on slow-mo? Yes. But I think you could say it's a flagrant one because he went too hard in it. But in the same point, he was trying to shield the ball off and not get pushed himself into the ball because he knows, well, if I'm running, if Brock Cunningham's on the other side of that play, he's going to try and knock the guy into the ball so it's off of him. So he's trying to make sure that doesn't happen. He seals him off. He does it too hard. It should have been a flagrant one. I get why it's a flagrant 2. It's a different game today than it was 20 years ago. And then also, you're in Lubbock. You don't want to start a riot. They did have the kid getting pulled out, 18 years old apparently, getting pulled out, the mullet, the mustache, just that phone call home for bail. No, but you don't understand. In a game where we're down 20, a guy made a basketball play and did it a little rough. So no, I had to get thrown out because they're fixing the games. Just silly stuff. No, I'm proud of Brock because he went in there. He gave the right speech. He was there in the post game and happy for his team. He played a really good game, and the hook 'em and the horns up on the way out is always good. It's always good. Chan there says, first Toto, now Mike. That was the Doobie Brothers, though. It is Mike McDonald, but it is the Doobie Brothers. He also says, don't go back there. Kendall and IT starting over Max was great. No, I mean, Kendall didn't start. IT started with Max A-Smith. So Kendall came off the bench. And Kendall and IT driving the basket was really good. And great call on that PD. Texas should continue driving the basket. Yes, they should. I get it's harder when they have really good rim protectors, but I also think when they have really good rim protectors, you just need to have Dylan DeSue on the other side. He can hit that 6-7 footer really easy. So when he comes out, if he jumps out, you saw the play earlier when they kind of ran the mix and Kendall Weaver came across into the paint and just had to take a step over and was wide open for a 5 or 6 footer. Like those types of plays, I think Texas could get more if they went for them. And also says for you, the glue guy, culture guy, team guy is Rojo. I agree with you there. Personally, don't think Brock's play was any more dirty than the elbow on A-Smith or the hack on Weaver at the rim. Texas Tech never handles getting beat by Texas well, and they seem mad. Yeah, I mean, look, it was a flagrant one. I don't think the one on Max A-Smith was even a flagrant. You could say it because head and neck area, and that was the one Brock didn't go head and neck. Brock didn't go lower and try and hurt the legs. There was definitely no intent to injure in what Brock did. I don't think that Williams was trying to hurt Max A-Smith. I think his just elbow was out, and he just made a bad play. But I don't think either one of them was necessarily intentional to hurt a guy or intentionally dirty. I just don't think they were. I think in basketball, there are points where there's going to be contact, and it seems like it's more when you have thousands of screaming fans, it seems to get a little bit crazier. All right, let's do one more, and then we'll talk some NFL, and we'll come back to the text line. Texter says, Weaver gives me Doge Balbay vibes, but better on offense. Balbay was my favorite glue guy, but look out for Weaver in a year or two. Look out for Weaver next season, man. If that offense can continue to improve, his athleticism, his going up, like that's a guy who could not only be a glue guy, a energy guy, but if he continues to grow as a player, he was at UTA, like he basically hasn't had the best, staff and best coaching and all of that. Up until this point, he has already improved a ton. I said earlier about the play when Pop Isaacs is driving down on a fast break and he has a basketball IQ to step away from it while still getting the block and not picking up the foul. Just stuff like that. If he continues to pick that up, starts to build the offensive end a little bit, he'll be a starter next year or, playing 20, 30 minutes a game for the next couple of seasons. And I think his potential is really, really high because he has the athleticism. He has a lot of the factors that, like a Brock Cunningham, we understand the athleticism is not going to be there. But Kendall Weaver has the athleticism. He can jump out of the gym. So that part of the game is not a worry. It's more learning how to control it, learning how to do those things. He's taken a lot of big steps this season from early Kendall Weaver to where he is now and not turning the ball over, starting to make smarter plays. I'm excited. I'm super excited to see him next season. Next season, I'm super excited to see him. But I'm excited to see him in the tournament, too. I can't lie. I'm excited to see him there. All right, let's talk some NFL real quick. We'll get back to the text line. Keep them coming in, 512-447-3776. Do want to get into a little bit of combine stuff first. T'Vondre Sweat, the reports were, did meet with the Cowboys today. He was talking with the Cowboys. They're a team that would definitely be able to get him in the first round. If they decide they want a big defensive tackle, he's clearly somebody they're going to be looking at. He's going to be on their board depending on where he goes because that defensive tackle position and run stopping was a big issue for them. Byron Murphy will not be on the board when the Cowboys pick, most likely. So T'Vondre Sweat could be a little bit more of a someone they're looking at. And it was interesting because Paxton Anderson played at Texas. He is the grandson of Jerry Jones. He was the one who was in the war room last year during the draft and was telling Jerry to draft DeMarvion over Sean and help, give the intel on DeMarvion. He is now the one giving the intel on T'Vondre Sweat. He was in the meeting with the Cowboys as well, but apparently that was a good meeting today. And then T'Vondre spoke with the media, a funny little clip. T'Vondre, of course, also one of those guys you love because he is a really big personality. He was asked if he'd weighed in today. He had not weighed in today, and he was asked about his 40 time and some drills. Here's what T'Vondre Sweat had to say.
Ma'am?
Did you weigh in?
I haven't.
Okay.
We'll weigh in tomorrow. So everybody that want to know, you'll see tomorrow.
What do you expect? Where do you want to be the most effective that you could be as a player?
This past season, I played 365, and that's where I feel comfortable at.
That was a pretty big increase from what you played at in previous seasons. What was behind that decision?
You know how man is. I mean, you won yourself. We got to grow into our bodies. And this is me, as y'all see. I'm a big guy, big frame, and that's just how it is. I just grew into my body, man.
How much has your frame been a talking point with teams when you've been in interviews or had conversations?
Everyone. But let y'all know, I'm doing everything at the combine before y'all even ask. I feel like a lot of y'all gonna be like, when I run this 40, I'm gonna shock a lot of y'all, So
What do you anticipate running?
4.4, 4.5.
So T'Vondre Sweat is predicting a 4.4, 4.5, 40, which if he does, he's getting a first-round draft pick. But interesting to see him come out, his personality shining. He's one of those guys you feel in the meetings and everything is going to raise his draft stock just by guys meeting him, understanding who he is, understanding the teammate he could be, that it's a guy that you could draft onto your team with T'Vondre Sweat. And this is a guy who's built to be a leader on your team. So I think he's done well in that aspect. We also got some audio from Byron Murphy when he was asked who is faster, who he thinks will have the faster 40 time, A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. And then he was asked who he would play basketball with. And excuse the one of the hosts here, he does not know that it's Adonai Mitchell, which I get. It's a name that is, if I did not cover Texas, I probably wouldn't get either. But here's Byron Murphy talking about who he thinks is the faster guy between AD and X-Man.
Who's the best athlete, Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, or Jatavian Sanders?
Man, that's hard right there, but man, I'll probably say X.
Okay, thank you.
X,
I'm a big Xavier Worthy guy.
Well, when he's not covering them, so you got to take it for a grain of salt.
Byron might be able to cover him. He can do just about everything. All right, this might be a little easier. If you're playing basketball 2-on-2, who you, it's you four guys in the mix. Who you drafting first?
Man, I'm driving X off the rip.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There we go. Over Adonai?
I never seen AD hoop, but
okay.
I know X.
Sometimes guys might be good football players, not very good basketball players.
But X for sure. I'm taking him first.
Thank you. Now we're making some movement, Rick. That's what I'm talking about. Even over Jatavian, who could be like a 4.
Oh yeah, I'll take him too. He's a good hooper too.
You're
but I'll take X though for sure.
Yeah, I'll take X though for sure. Says he's a hooper and will be the fastest. But Byron Murphy there giving some stuff, giving a little talk there as well for. At the combine. We'll be interested to see their drills, their 40 times, all of that should be within the next couple days. We should get all that information. But good stuff there. 11 Longhorns at the combine. We'll keep you up as I keep seeing more. I can't do it during the show, but before the show, if I find some stuff. If you find anything great, any there, send it on the text line. I'll see if I can play it off the computer. If we can play it somewhere, we'll try and play any sound or any reports you get from the combine that are during the show. Go ahead and send those in too. You can send those in too. Also, a quick note, Rod Wright, the former Texas Longhorn that was thought to be the favorite to be the D-line coach for the Texas Longhorns, has now been promoted officially to the D-line coach for the Texans. He was the assistant D-line coach for the Texans last season. Then the defensive line coach was not renewed. The thought was Rod Wright was going to step into that role. That's why he did not take the Texas job. Those seem to be happening. We don't know if he was ever formally offered the Texas job, but we know the Texans wanted to keep him, and Rod Wright is now the D-line coach for the Texans. One other thing I want to hit in the NFL today is that the NFL Players Association poll came out today. They did this for the first time last season, and it's basically a poll that the Players Association does. It's all anonymous. But then they basically asked players from all these teams. They said now even more players are involved because of success of it last year. People saw some improvements in some areas, but they basically asked them about a series of questions about a few different subjects, and they rank 1 through 10 what they feel the team is on these subjects. Then they can put in why they put them. And so like the different categories are treatment of families, food, cafeteria, nutritionist, dietitian, locker room, training staff, weight room, strength coaches, team travel, head coach, and owner. And then they have grades from F to A and A+, A-, all of that. So those are the scores. Now, there's been some teams that we know were notoriously bad last season, some that were really good. When we look at it this season at a brief poll, because this came out a few hours before we went on air, there is a few. The Cowboys actually had the biggest drop, but it's not huge, but they did have the biggest drop, and there's some interesting points about the biggest drop because they did ask some more different questions this season, but they had the biggest drop. They were 5th last year in the poll, the highest ranked cumulative score of player satisfaction and happiness for the team. They were 5th last year, down to 12th this season. One of the big reasons they had was the training facilities got pretty bad scores for the Cowboys. That basically they were saying the facilities weren't big enough. There was not enough people in the facilities to make sure everybody was getting the treatment they needed for their injuries, and to make sure they were feeling at the top level. That was something they felt needed to be improved. I think it was something where they weren't thrilled with it last year, but it got worse this season, so that went down. And then an interesting other part, they added ownership in this season. They didn't have it in the first season, but they added an ownership, and it's not just ownership of do you like the guy or whatnot. It is how much you feel they're willing to improve the team, spend money to improve the team on the field, off the field, improve facilities, improve conditions for you. Where do you feel that team's going to be? I thought that Jerry Jones would be a little bit higher in this. He ends up being 19th. It is a B. I believe it was like an 8.6, so it's not a terrible score. But a lot of guys really do like their owners. Some get really bad scores. We'll get to one of those in a minute. But Jerry Jones, 19th in that one. They also said team travel they were not big fans of. They still have roommates. There's 7 teams that still require players to have roommates, and not every player, but some players to have roommates on the road. The Cowboys are one of those. Those players didn't like that very much. But it was interesting to see that they felt after he built the star at Frisco and everything else, I guess there were some players that were not as thrilled with what Jerry has done in the last couple of seasons, that maybe it was not as good as it was a year ago. And maybe that's some ill content of, not being able to produce for another season, any of that. But it's interesting they dropped a little bit in that poll. Jerry's going to try and fix those things. They're still always an A+ in family relations. That's something that Jerry's very big at. For the Texans, they were 4th last season, dropped to 7th this season. One of the big complaints, they were basically A and B on almost everything. One of the biggest complaints they had was they don't have a sauna or a steam room, which most teams have, and they want a better place to hang out in between meetings. So nothing huge for the Texans. They weren't necessarily the best at anything, but pretty above average at everything. There's fans of D'Amico Ryans, but he's not a super high ranked. Cal McNair is not the best ranked owner, but pretty across the board okay for the Texans. Looking at some of the extremes, though, the Commanders still 32nd, new ownership. Clearly enough has not changed. They're trying to build things now, but they're still the 32nd ranked team. So no surprises there because their buildings are still bad. They're, everything they've done, they haven't made enough changes yet. So they're still considered players are the least happy in Washington with the Commanders. Dolphins are your number 1 team this year. Happy with how everything's going. They're saying that their owner is giving them everything they need to win. Vikings 2nd place this year. Dolphins were 2nd last year, 1st this year. Vikings were 1st last year, 2nd this year. Both those owners very well liked. Everything those players feel like they're getting treated very well. What's interesting though, the one that is surprising that people are talking about today is the Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs are 31st in this poll. And ownership, Clark Hunt, 32nd, ranked by the players of Kansas City as the worst owner or the ownership group because he's refusing to spend money. Now, there was things they said in the poll last year that they wanted facility upgrades and they wanted this and they won the Super Bowl and they thought, well, we won the Super Bowl, so we're going to voice our concerns and this will be taken care of. And the feeling apparent around the Chiefs locker room apparently is they do not care. We've now won 2, and they're not improving things. They said they were going to make our locker room better. It's very outdated. They bought us new chairs. That's not enough. We need more things. So it's interesting to see that this Chiefs team, the fact that there's not star wide receivers and star players, they're having trouble keeping them. It may not just be the salary cap and the money. That there are some people in this team that apparently the culture is great, but the ownership being pretty cheap in Kansas City, even with all the success in winning, it feels like they're not investing enough back in their team. At least the players feel so. Interesting piece for Kansas City fans. So if you are a hater of the Chiefs, this is your best news because this is as bad as the Chiefs are going to look for a while. Is finishing 31st in this poll. That the Commanders are the only team that the players disliked the groups enough and disliked the ownership and disliked the conditions of being a Commander. It's the only place worse than the Chiefs. That's crazy. That's an absurd thing to see that number. But the Chiefs 31st. Cowboys to drop from 5th to 12th, not bad. Texans 4th to 7th. I think it was more along the lines both those teams kind of felt they were doing okay. Some other teams climbed up a lot more because the players, they voiced concerns and those concerns were met. Cafeteria food and that stuff was met by a lot of teams. Travel was fixed by some of these teams. Hiring more staff is a lot of things. Like for the Cowboys, they're just like, you just got to hire a few more staff. Not hard. Jerry will probably fix it this offseason. They will get going forward in the right direction. I think last season the players were a little bit happier, and so it was possible that they didn't necessarily make the adjustments they need to. Cardinals also really down on that list. Players not happy, but they're also a notoriously cheap franchise. Just crazy to see. You see the Commanders and the Cardinals and teams like that are, consistently struggle. And you think, well, yeah, because they're just poorly run teams. But, man, the Chiefs being 31st on that list seems like a crazy one there. It does feel like there should be – like this is one of those things you can do in the NFL because of the players' union and because of all these things. You could not do this at anybody else's job where you just say, well, the break food's not very good. And they're like, is that Tim? Is that Tim said that? Well, Tim's never getting food again. No more pizza parties for Tim. Let's get back to the text line. with the text line for a minute. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back, hit some NBA, and get back to the text line. I want to keep getting to you guys. Poll of the day, who is your culture guy, your glue guy, your team guy? Brock Cunningham, in honor of him, sending Lubbock and Texas Tech on their way last night. Texter says, Brock payback on Notified was beautiful. He does that, and TT look like asses because of their classless fans. Texas Tech Lubbock did not look good in that game because of throwing the stuff on the court. And you knew it was a game too. Like, what was really scary about it? And it didn't end up mattering. And that's a good thing. But there was a part, and Rodney Terry said after the game that he went to the ref and said, look, if this doesn't stop, then we're leaving. Like, we're walking off the court and we're going to have to figure this out because they're throwing stuff at our bench. And then he gave credit to Texas Tech's coach that he did the right thing and got on the speaker and got them to stop. So everything was okay in that. I was more concerned that if there was any chance Texas Tech came back, they were storming that court and they were coming for Texas players. Like, you knew that was going to be an issue, that even though they shouldn't have stormed the court, you knew that the kids there just were going to make a bad decision and Texas Tech was going to have a lot of security to try and stop it. That was a little bit more worrying. Texas made it not matter, though, because they finished out the game. They played the part the way you want it to be done. And people were leaving the stands early, camped out, and didn't even wait till the end of the game. That's what you want to see if you're a Texas fan. Nate trying to get me riled up. I see you, Nate. Says, we won despite RT, JK. Come on now, Nate. Trying to get me riled up. It's Wednesday. It's a Wednesday. We got to get through the week, man. Come on, man. Jay Drinker 77 says an answer for a question. Jay went in Manu Ginobili. Ginobili's a good pull on that one, too. Definitely a guy on a team that you think, when you think Spurs, you think Manu Ginobili. Texter says, my all-time glue guy has got to be Freddie Stein. A lot of Texas Longhorn culture is due to him. And I apologize. I'm going to say Freddie Steinmark. Freddie Steinmark. There we go. Yes. Yeah, he is another Longhorn culture guy. I appreciate that right guy from New Mexico. Solid one there. Dave Ram says, BS matchup or not, effort can and should be against everyone, regardless of size and talent. I agree with you. I agree with you, Dave Ram. I'm saying that one of the reasons why the effort was up was because of the success of the effort. And I think they're bringing effort every night, and when it's thwarted, they lose effort very quickly, and that one they're able to keep it going. But I do agree with you. You should bring effort every night, and Brock can make that hit still if he dives to the ball, still make his point, love to play. Also, the audio broadcast sucked. I had to hear those Texas hillbillies screaming nonsense all game. Yeah, I felt bad. The funniest part was Fran Fraschilla going from that was a good basketball play to he should be ejected in record time. And I like Fran Fraschilla a lot. He's always been a really nice guy to me. So I like him a lot. He's one of those great minds to talk basketball with. You very get the chance. But yeah, that was a funny, where he realized he was like, all right, we get it. And if he would have dove for the ball, but he was also right by a table where if he would have dove for the ball, he would have taken a lot of impact. I really just think he didn't think he was going to be as hard as he hit him, because I've done that plenty of times in my life. And not even just basketball, just football or anything else. You're playing and you think, oh, I'll just kind of brush this guy off. And you lower your shoulder and you do it and you forget you're running as fast as you can. And you have the body weight and muscle that you're going to take a guy out. And I think it was more of that. He wanted to put it in there. He wasn't going to do anything. Like Brock Cunningham, the beginning of Proud Mary with Tina Turner and Ike Turner. And she says, we never, ever do nothing nice and easy. That's Brock Cunningham. He is that. We never do anything nice and easy. And that's Brock Cunningham. He's not going to be, if there's a play there, the dive or whatever else, he's going to do things the hard way. And that's what he did. Look, I get it. If he had a bad game up to that point and Texas was losing, then that's not a great play. But what he did, it's a great point to have in a resume when you say, maybe not my best season, but I'm going out in Lubbock like a champ. I love to see that. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll come back, do some NBA and more of the text line. We come back here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 101.9 AM 1260, the Horn app, hornfm.com. Back on Sports Complex here on the Horn. Text line still open 512-447-3776 if you guys want to jump on there. Haven't had the haters today. Just having a real fun conversation after a win last night. Texas gets a win over Texas Tech. We're having a good conversation today. It's all friendly. The cold front came in, so I'm not sweating in the office either, so it's all good. It's all good today. I do want to talk a little NBA before I get back to the text line. Hit a couple things for you. Interesting news from Atlanta, and I'll tell you why it's interesting. And Spurs fans, some of them are for this, some of them are against it, but it's an interesting piece. Trae Young is missing at least 4 weeks with an injury. He is getting a torn ligament and his left pinky finger fixed. That means he's out for basically most of the rest of the season, and that's the wording is not he will be back in 4 weeks, is he will be reevaluated in 4 weeks. One of those things for a shooter and especially a ball handler, very difficult to play with any hand injury. You don't want to have those turnovers. It's just difficult to play if something is constantly hurting or not being able to grip or any of that. So he is 4 weeks. This could be a point. They'll probably still be the 10 seed. He probably will come back at some point in the playoffs. But they are going to be testing in these next 4 weeks how the Hawks look with DeJounte Murray as their main guard and not Trae Young. And if they continue to play, if they play at a higher level or play better than they've been playing with Trae Young in the lineup, this could mean that the Hawks could be starting to get ready to move on from Trae Young because they could look at this and say, well, if we're producing with DeJounte Murray is a lot easier to build a team around, and we can get other guys in here, and we can build this team a lot easier with different players and DeJounte Murray than Trae Young, who is very, very ball dominant. So we don't know if you'll be able to fit, and there could be teams out there who could be wanting a guy. And I know the Spurs have been referenced a lot about Trae Young because he is one of the best lob passers in the NBA, and I feel it's silly to build it just on that, but they would like some more scoring. He doesn't help their defense at all. I don't necessarily think it's a fit. I would not be in favor of it as a Spurs fan and someone who's covered the Spurs and followed them for a long time. But that is an interesting piece because you'll be seeing. And now if it doesn't work, they could be ready to move on from DeJounte Murray, who was very much on the block at the trade deadline. They did not move him. However, now they're kind of getting to see the flip of the coin because they saw how they were doing without DeJounte Murray with Trae Young in. They'll get to see the other side. If they're worse with just DeJounte Murray, you could see them try and move him off and find a different player to come in to try and work as Trae Young's sidekick. It is going to be interesting to see how the Hawks do. Now, they got a pretty big lead over the Brooklyn Nets at that 10 spot, so they're most likely still going to be in the play-in unless they completely collapse and Brooklyn, who has not been playing very well either, really starts to light it up. They'll probably still be in that 10 spot in the East. Those teams in the East that are lower are just not very good. But very interesting to see if Trae Young, we already know 4 weeks, he's already missing a month, and then will be reevaluated, could miss even more time. That is an interesting piece that the rest of the league needs to look at because he could be on the market come the end of the season because they're probably not going to offer him a huge contract if they feel he's not the guy to build around. If they feel they can win games without him, they might go a different route than Trae Young, and a lot of people don't like that. DeMarcus Cousins already came out and said that he hopes that Trae Young never has to play in an Atlanta jersey again because they've done wrong by him. But that also is from a guy who, could never be the centerpiece of a franchise either. And I like DeMarcus Cousins. I think he's a good player. But just another guy who didn't understand the team element of the game enough and really could never get it all together to realize how to be the best team player and play 40 minutes and play off ball and all of that stuff. He was never his strongest point. Really good player. Really, really good player. Just it always felt like there was that next gear, and I want him on the Spurs more than I wanted Trae Young, that's for sure with DeMarcus Cousins. But it just never came together. It's always fun to see these ex-players come out and say, no, I know how basketball should be played. And you go, well, how much did you win? And they go, never. And you go, all right, well, then why are you the expert on how to win games? Because it feels like you may not be the expert. Just me, though. Just me. All the Texas teams were in action last night. All three lost. Spurs lose to the Timberwolves 114-105. Spurs have 22 turnovers in this game. Not one of Wemby's best games. He's still double-double and not one of his best games. Anthony Edwards puts up 34 points in it. They're in the game. They're competitive. But this is a team that really feels like they're hitting a rough patch after that All-Star break, still on the rodeo road trip. it feels like all this frustration of not getting wins and then getting close a couple times and still not getting them. It feels like they're very frustrated and trying to force things right now. They need to get back in control of, where they were playing right before the All-Star break. We're starting to look better. Don't look very good right now. Turn the ball over a ton. So I think that there's going to be, when they get home, this rodeo road trip is taking its toll on a young team. We knew that Wemby was going to have a part of, being young, and he's a guy who says, don't call me after 8 p.m. or all of that. He's just having a hard time, I think, being on the road this much. I think All-Star Weekend didn't necessarily go the way that he had hoped it would have gone, with the rest of his teammates not really caring to be there. That really bothered him. And so I think there's a part of it. He understands the bigger picture in the long-term game. But if I'm one of those Spurs right now and I want to be in the league, I know I'm going to try my hardest to do everything right to help get Wemby some more wins because – I think he's looking at the rest of his team as well as the Spurs and the management and everybody else and finding who is playing better right now and who's working the hardest to get things going and who maybe is stressed out and kind of taking time off because they feel like, they took the time off at the break and they haven't checked fully back in yet. The Rockets lose a game to the Thunder, 112-95. Again, this is a problem that the Rockets have had all season, that Jabari Smith is not a big interior presence and Alperen Sengun is not an interior defensive presence either. 58 points in the paint for the Thunder. And then, unfortunately, Brooks and Van Vliet, your two veterans in that lineup, to have a bad game combined for 12 points. It leads to a loss for the Rockets, just not enough offense. Jabari Smith Jr., though, has a good game, 18 points, 13 rebounds, does well, but defensively just isn't a shot blocker. Sengun's not going to get inside and be trying to block shots. So these teams right now are killing the Rockets in the paint. It's a similar problem that the Mavs had that they're trying to fix. The Rockets are going to have to figure out. They got Steven Adams to try and come back next year to help fix that problem, but they can have to figure out something. And as much as Sengun is doing so much on the offensive end, and it's an offensive game, if you don't play defense, you're not going to win a lot. And they're having that problem right now. Everyone knows to attack Sengun on the other end of the court, and they're paying for it. And then in the Mavs game, Mavs drop it 121-119. It's a close game, back and forth. The Cavs come back at the end of the game. The Mavs look like they have a pretty good run at it. Cavs have the lead. P.J. Washington gets a pass from Luka Doncic under the basket, puts it in. One of P.J. Washington's best games of the season, hits what he feels is the game winner with 2.1 seconds left. No timeouts left for the Cavs. What are they going to do? Max Strus catches the ball, flings it up from 59 feet away from the basket, and knocks down a game winner to win against the Mavs. The Cavs are the number 2 team ranked in the East right now. They are pulling out these close games. Max Strus, what a fourth quarter. 5 threes in the fourth quarter, including that game winner. A huge reason that the Cavs are in this game to beat them. Luka Doncic, of course, has another crazy stat night. 45 points, 9 rebounds, 14 assists. But the Mavs, the points in the paint, they out-rebounded 47-36. Daniel Gafford did not play a lot in that game. Derek Lively's doing okay. He's a little bit better to run when you're playing in Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. Daniel Gafford's not really quick enough to stay with those guys, so he only played about 7 minutes. But they also have a back-to-back. You would expect Gafford to play a little bit more tonight against the Raptors. Lively is a game-time decision. The Mavs should be able to get into Toronto and get a win. They just have to forget the game last night, try and go get a win tonight over the Raptors. All right, let's get back to the text line and try and get to some more of those texts before we get out of here. Tech can ingest a satchel of Richards. I imagine... I think I know what you're saying there. I think you said it radio friendly enough there. I won't say it again though. How about that? Texter says, nice win for the Longhorns. I guess I was right yesterday. I hope those 2 teams meet again in the Big 12 tournament when both teams are healthy after exchanging waves on each other's floor. Your analysis on the Cunningham play is spot on. He didn't go into it thinking I'm going to knock the crap out of this guy. It was just a collision. He should have got it. But it is what it is. The fan base reaction was ridiculous, and honestly, it cost Texas Tech some points, which they really needed. I agree with that. And this is from a Texas Tech fan, and I can tell you what I've said the entire show. Once Warren Washington was ruled out for this game, it became a must-win for Texas. So when we say healthy, Warren Washington is a big piece of that healthy. You'd love to see it. And look, I think the teams do match up well. I think it's a fun game to watch between Texas and Texas Tech, because they're around the same level of team. Texas is a more athletic, probably more athletically talented team than Texas Tech, but Texas Tech has fighters on it, and they have guys who know how to get points. Pop Isaacs understood if his shot's not falling, get into people's chest, get those foul calls, and he's able to play like that. It's a really good matchup of going back and forth, and the Longhorns were able to pull it out. But when Warren Washington was ruled out, the 7-footer for Tech, it became a must-win for Texas. They did their job, though. That's what you want to see from this team. And so when I say that, I'm not taking anything away from Texas, because a lot of teams don't win the ones you have to. And Texas had that problem earlier in the season not doing that. It was good to see them get in a position of a must-win in a hostile environment and win it handily, be able to take it away. Average Joe says, pure Westlake arrogance is so fun when it's on your team. I like that. Great. And a -1 layup by Weaver. Yes, I agree. That was a -1. It was not an and one. It was a and one less from Kendall Weaver. Texter says, why is it Oklahoma's non-conference schedule always has easy teams which turn out automatic wins, whereas Texas plays the top 25 teams such as Alabama last season and Michigan next season? Oklahoma's non-conference teams next season are Temple, Houston, Tulane, and Maine. Are you kidding me? Oklahoma's toughest non-conference game last season with Cincinnati. Because they have two different philosophies on it. Texas wants to be a championship team, and Oklahoma wants to win games. That's the reality. That's a nice way I can put it. Now, Texas also understands there's more money in it when Texas plays a big game, that there is a monetary element for it as well for CDC and this Texas team, that when they play Michigan, they're going to make a lot of money to do it. And when they play Alabama, they're going to make some money. But they realize, and Sark realizes, and he's one of those guys, there's certain coaches who say, I want to play the best teams. Tom Herman was a guy who didn't want to. Tom Herman did not want to play. He wants to win games. I think there's a difference between wanting to win games, and I think there's a difference of winning games and winning championships. Sark wants to win championships. Oklahoma wants to win games. That's the way I'll say it. When you schedule non-cons like that, well, maybe we'll get in there and hopefully we'll be ready for it. But are you going to be ready? Because Texas had their struggles, but Texas was able to play well at the end of the season because they had those struggles, because they had that game against Alabama. It gave them confidence in a lot of games. I'm much for playing those games. The school scheduled their own non-conference. There is no real big regulations. There's less regulations in the SEC. Texas is still going to go out there and try and play some difficult schools because they want to win championships. Texter Jimmy Green says, I have a quick question for you, Patrick. Who's your surprise breakout Longhorn player to show out at the Combine and our way higher draft pick? Become a way higher draft pick? I don't know. I mean, the easy answer is Keelan Robinson would be a guy who step up and show what he could do, but I think he's also just kind of more of a special teams guy. I think really is if Xavier Worthy comes out and just dominates at drills, I don't know if it's a surprise, but I think he can move up. If JT Sanders shows really well in blocking drills and has footwork and those things, then I think you could see him move up as well. But I don't know if there's any guy deeper down the list like Jordan Whittington or anybody who's necessarily going to be a Combine guy, because they're much more, they're not necessarily the drills guys. They're going to be team guys and everything else. But I'd say one of those guys, if they just have off the charts numbers, could possibly do it. But a good question. If anybody else has a chime in there on the text line, throw it in there. We'll try to get to it. Dex says, my All-American Freddie. All right, I like that one. And Reed keeps eating the players' burgers and fries in Kansas City. Yes, I like that. Brock Cunningham for president. We'll vote for that one too. Ardov says, fire RT. Just kidding. Where are the RT haters at today? For all the naysayers who want to run RT out of town, I'll ask them for their basketball coaching resume. Look, I get it. And look, I'm not going to walk out and say RT's free. I'll criticize RT when he deserves to be criticized. But I also said, when we're pretending that Texas is going to not be at the NIT, and I said if they win the game, they're fine and they're back in the tournament and they're fine, then that's the issues are much smaller than RT's a great coach and RT's not. The world's not on fire. The sky is not falling. Chicken Little comes on the text line too often. It says the sky is falling. That is when you'll see me get more upset, because the sky's not falling. And we don't need to throw money at issues. The Texas, that's the other thing that will drive me nuts. And I realized last night why it drove me so nuts. When I hear we have the most money, we can do whatever we want, all I hear is Aggies. That to me, that's an Aggie way of dealing with things. No, we have all the money. We have more money than God. So we'll go out and buy the best team. And then we're not going to win. And so we'll tell them, transfer, get out of here. We'll go buy the best team again. Well, okay, we got to fire our coach. Spend $75 million to fire our coach. But it don't matter. We'll buy the best team now. That's what I hear when I say when people say we have enough money, we can outbid anybody. That's Aggie thinking. We have the best brains in Texas. We have the smartest people here at UT. That's why we should be going after the right coaches, the right players. That's why I like it. I just don't like throwing money at things. Money helps. Don't get me wrong. You want to get the NIL players. You want to get all that stuff. But just throwing money and saying that line, we can hire anybody, we have money, that's an Aggie line. It's not a Longhorn line. Kerry from Georgetown says, we dodged a bullet with Tech's big man out. They handed it to us in the mood earlier this year. Two different things. Those are two different parts. We did with Warren Washington being out. 100% agree on that. But the game earlier this season, that was also partially because some issues of the lineup not being figured out. Dylan Dessou only played 17 minutes in that game. Dylan Dessou's the best player on the court. Those types of things. Caden Shedrick was not having a great time either right then. All right, let me take our last break. We'll come back, wrap it up, hit the rest of the text line. We come back here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, Horn app, and hornfm.com. All right, we ran out of time, but I appreciate everybody for joining me on the text line. Always love having a conversation with you. We'll do it again tomorrow. I know my man Dave Ram said, not a hater, but I said my piece. I'm with you, Dave. Well, I love having the conversations with you. I got you. We can agree to disagree on some of this, and we'll keep fighting. And at the end of the day, I think I'll be right. And you think you will too, but I got the microphone. And Jimmy the Gringo, keep on preaching about building culture instead of buying it. We aren't A&M, we are Texas. There you go, Jimmy the Gringo. Love it. All right, we got to take off. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, be kind, be safe, keep your underwear clean, and we'll see you right back here for more from the Sports Complex.